Top five, top five, top five.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome to the countdown. You know what time it is. Brandon, what time is it, man?
It's time for football season, man. If we're talking about fantasy football sleepers, that must mean that football season is upon us. And today we got a tough-ass episode. Rob, let them know what we got, man.
Absolutely, man. We got the top 5 fantasy sleepers entering 2023. So football season right around the corner.
Yep.
We know you, the viewer, you probably got a fantasy football draft or two coming up.
Gotcha.
These are the 5 guys who could win you your league, win that money, and have a great time doing it. So stay tuned. We got some great content coming in this episode.
But before we break that down, make sure y'all smash that like button and tap that subscribe because we're coming back every single week with some fire-ass content.
So getting into the countdown, let's make it very clear. We got one of every single position. So we got a defense on this list. We got a tight end on this list, quarterback, running back, receiver. All 5 are covered. So we're starting on the defensive side of the ball with the Miami Dolphins at number 5.
Yep.
And a lot of people are down on the Dolphins after Jalen Ramsey suffered that knee injury. For good reason. Jalen Ramsey's one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. He brought a lot of hype to that Miami defense. But I got news for people, Brandon. The Miami defense, especially that cornerback crew, they got cornerbacks galore ready to take his place. Of course, we're talking about Xavier Howard already locking dudes up on one side of the field. And then you combine that with some other guys that they have in the mix, especially Cam Smith, that second-round pick, already looking good, already looking like he could be an immediate impact rookie on that side of the ball. And then you go in other places. You look at the safety room with Javon Holland, one of the best safeties in the league. Then you go to the defensive tackle position. We're talking Christian Wilkins, a perennial Pro Bowler now at this point. Then you go to the linebacker room where they added David Long, one of the more underrated signings to pair with Jerome Baker, 2 great linebackers to defend the run. Then you go to the edge position, probably their strongest position of the entire defense when you have Bradley Chubb and Jawan Phillips, a first-round pick who's looked the part so far, looks to take his game to the next level. This defense is loaded, B.
Yeah, Rob. I mean, you basically covered it from top to bottom. Another player that they have is Kader Kahu playing in the slot, who had a really good year last year, showed a lot of promise. So they still do have some players that could cover the slack for Jalen Ramsey. I mean, we're talking about Jalen Ramsey, though, who is an all-pro caliber corner, is an all-pro corner. But at the end of the day, they still have enough depth, and they made smart draft decisions to be able to rebound from losing him early on in the season.
Absolutely. So that's the kind of defense that can put you in a position to get those 10 to 12 points every single week with a tough schedule for sure. But when you have those kind of studs on that side of the ball, they can make plays. They can get those turnovers, get those interceptions, get those sacks, and put up points for your team.
Got to be stout with an explosive-ass offense, too, as well.
So getting into number 4, now we go to the quarterback position where we got second-year breakout candidate Kenny Pickett for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Brandon.
Yeah, Robin, there's been a lot of history of quarterbacks breaking out in their second year. We've seen Lamar Jackson do it. We saw Trevor Lawrence do it. We saw Patrick Mahomes do it.
MVPs
So, I mean, it's a really long list, and we can see Kenny Pickett going on that same trajectory. At the end of last year, he won all 5 of his last complete starts. And Kenny Pickett only had 1 turnover down the stretch. You saw him really start to put things together, really start to gel with the offensive coordinator that had a really stagnant playbook throughout most of the year. But obviously, he started to really gel with his receivers, especially started to gel with George Pickens, who we saw making some big plays in training camp. And the Steelers have some good weapons. They still have Pat Freiermuth. They have Jalen Warren coming out the backfield along with Najee Harris. Obviously, Deontay Johnson is one of the best route runners in the NFL. So we're going to see what the Steelers can do. And Kenny Pickett has all the tools, and he has the moxie and the running ability to really break out in his second year.
Yeah, I wish I could add some quality commentary to that, Brandon, but you really nailed every single point like I would hit on. You're talking about a guy entering his second year. Mahomes, Jackson, all these guys last year with Trevor Lawrence taking that leap. We can expect someone to do it. Some people think maybe Brock Purdy's going to do it, but I think Kenny Pickett's such a better candidate, and with those kind of weapons around him, they added Allen Robinson to the mix. You have one of the most talented running backs in Najee Harris. You have guys like George Pickens and Deontay Johnson who are either great at getting open like Johnson or great at, doesn't matter if they're open or not, they're going to come down with the football like George Pickens. And so that's just a quarterback's dream right there. And the one thing holding this team back last year, other than, rookie quarterback play, was that offensive line. And that's an area that they focused on improving in this offseason, taking an offensive tackle in the first round, fortifying that offensive front, giving Kenny Pickett some more time, not only to make plays with his arm, but make some plays with his legs too. And as fantasy owners, we know that's where the money really is. When a quarterback is getting those extra yards on the ground, putting it in the end zone with his legs, that just is something you really want to see. And Kenny Pickett is someone who has that ability. And with those weapons around him, with that solid offensive line, we expect a big year from Kenny Pickett and a big year from the Steelers overall.
Yeah, his ability to throw and his ability to run is really the part that slept on. Kenny Pickett can really run really well, and he can actually run like a top 10 running quarterback in the NFL. So don't stay patient and watch out for his legs, because he can really make some big plays this season.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't hit that fake slide like he did at Pitt.
Yeah, that's going to cost him.
But moving into number 3, we got Kadarius Toney for the Kansas City Chiefs. And Brandon, there's one thing I know about fantasy going into this year. There's one take that I can give these viewers so they can take something with them and know, like, all right, this is actually going to happen. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to have a wide receiver one who's going to put up quality production.
No doubt.
Obviously, injuries can happen, so I'm not guaranteeing anything. But as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy, there's going to be a receiver that goes off. And if injuries do happen to Travis Kelce, it's even going to be more likely that some receiver steps up. Think what we saw last year with Juju Smith, that is the absolute floor of what the receiver number 1 in this offense does. Just the question is who is going to be the wide receiver 1 for this offense. They have a lot of candidates. They got Sky Moore. They got Rashee Rice. They got all these other guys. But Kadarius Toney is the most likely candidate. The only caveat that we're going to add to this is because he's dealing with an injury in training camp, he has an injury history. If he does go down, don't sleep on Justin Ross, the former first-round prospect out of Clemson, who could take his spot. But either way, both of those guys are great sleepers who are well worth the risk and could be a high boom for your team.
Yeah, Rob, that's a good caveat. I mean, Justin Ross has all the ability to be a really good receiver in the NFL. The only reason why he went undrafted is because of a neck injury or something along those lines. Right. But at the end of the day, when you think about what Kadarius Toney can bring to a football team, especially a team that recently lost Tyreek Hill and needs really that jet receiver, that
Absolutely.
big play, make people miss type of guy, it's Kadarius Toney. And unfortunately, he's dealt with injuries, which has been the only thing that has really held him back. But when you think about this receiving room, it's not much better, or it's a little worse than it was last year. I mean, you got Rashee Rice, like you said, MVS, and then you got Sky Moore. So, I mean, they really need a true number 1 to pair up with Travis Kelce. And if there's somebody that can get a guy the ball and make him better than maybe even his talent is, it's Patrick Mahomes. So, I mean, hopefully Kadarius Toney can stay healthy this year, because if they can get him the ball quick, he's going to make some people miss and make people look silly and really make some big plays for this offense.
All right, so Kadarius Toney, great sleeper prospect. Justin Ross, a great handcuff for that, especially at that X position in Andy Reid's offense, where we've seen guys like Deshaun Jackson go off, Tyreek Hill, even Jeremy Maclin in Kansas City. A lot of guys having success in that offense, regardless of who the quarterback is. Then when you had the most talented quarterback we've probably ever seen, it's just, 1 + 1 = 2 sometimes. So getting into number 2, though, we got tight end for the Tennessee Titans, Chig Okonkwo. I think I nailed that pronunciation right there.
That was pretty good, Rob. Chigoziem Okonkwo, he actually made some really big plays down the stretch last year for the Titans. Didn't play too much earlier in the year, but I mean, this guy put up 450 yards and 3 touchdowns with playing minimal snaps. Didn't even reach 400 snaps last year. So that tells you the way. Yeah, didn't even reach 400 snaps, bro. 453 touchdowns is actually really insane, especially for a rookie. And in a stagnant offense like the Titans have, they have one of the most basic run-heavy offenses that don't really feature a lot of throwing. And Ryan Tannehill obviously isn't one of the best throwing quarterbacks in the league, but they found a way to get this guy the ball, whether it was quick and let him run after the catch. He really has top-end speed. He actually had one of the fastest 40s in the draft that year from the tight end position. Athletic freak out of Maryland. I mean, he can really do it all. So if the Titans can get a little bit more upbeat and a little bit more rhythm in the offense, which hopefully DeAndre Hopkins can bring this year, then Chig Okonkwo could be a little bit slept on and can find himself open and making big play after big play after big play for a team that really needs something.
Yeah, a lot of people that we have on this list are probably people you're not finding on a lot of other lists.
Yeah.
This is the exception, all right? There's a reason why all these fantasy gurus, all these guys who are talking fantasy, they like Chig Okonkwo, and there's a lot of evidence to support him having that breakout second year. Because we're talking about a 4th-round rookie last year who had that kind of production in those limited snaps. And then you think about the fact that he was a combine warrior. Like, he was a raw prospect, wasn't even expected to do much his first year, wasn't even the starter because they had like Jeff Swaim or some shit at the tight end position. That guy's gone. There's really no competition in that tight end room. Not much competition on the outside. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be a threat, but there's going to be a lot of targets to go around, and we expect Chig Okonkwo, you got to pronounce it right, to have a great year in year 2 in that Tennessee offense.
Yeah, and another thing about the tight end position, you see tight ends come out of nowhere, like guys like Jimmy Graham, basketball guys, Antonio Gates. So to see somebody that's an athletic freak and show that their athleticism can translate to making big plays and production, and that's why Chigoziem Okonkwo could really be a really good player, as soon as next year.
Absolutely. So we've covered the quarterback position. We've covered the wide receiver position. We got the tight end, and we got the defense. So we saved the best for last, the most valuable position in fantasy. We're going running back, Alexander Mattison for the Minnesota Vikings. Dalvin Cook was the workhorse back in Minnesota for the last few years, dominating, becoming a Pro Bowl perennial kind of caliber player. He's gone. He ain't in Minnesota anymore. He's not in Minneapolis. He's not even anywhere close to that state. But what they do have is Alexander Mattison ready to pick up where he left off, ready to take that role as the running back one in that offense. We're talking about a very high-octane offense with guys like Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison to take the pressure out of the run game. So there's not going to be many stacked boxes. So this is a guy who's going to have a lot of opportunities in the backfield because of the lack of competition, and also in the actual plays because the quality of receivers and that passing offense and how dynamic it is. So it's just about, can Alexander Mattison take that next step? Because we've seen his production be limited, but when he starts, he goes off.
Yeah, we got Kevin O'Connell, who's an offensive head coach, came from the Sean McVay pedigree, right. So has a really electric, big-time offense, and we saw that last year in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And now they got T.J. Hockenson as well as the wide receiver candidates that you talked about, a really explosive offense, which just opens the floodgates. Alexander Mattison, who has started 6 games without Dalvin Cook, and in 4 of those 6 games, he's gone for 100-plus yards. So, I mean, he's shown the ability to put up big-time production when Dalvin Cook hasn't been there. So now that he has, the full range of the offense, you're going to see him make some really big plays, a big bruising back that also has the ability to shake people up and make them miss. Alexander Mattison could be a really big-time player in a position of need in fantasy, obviously, at running back.
Absolutely. So we got a lot of great sleepers on this list. Alexander Mattison might be the sleeping giant to cap it off. So those are 5 guys who you can take in the later rounds, in that 8th, 9th, 10th round, maybe even later, and they could be a big positive reinforcement to your team, help you win those early weeks, help you win those later weeks, and help you win those playoffs and capture that fantasy championship.
Some of them obvious guys off the board early. You better make sure you watch out for these guys so you can select them at the right point of the draft, and they could potentially win you a league, win you some money, win you some hardware, the whole 9 yards.
Ching.
So these are some big-time players. With that said, we'll catch y'all on the next episode. But before we go, make sure y'all smash that like button, hit that subscribe, because we're going to catch y'all next week with some fire-ass content. Peace.
See you next time.